News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio.
And then keep staying with us, folks. Let's let Namumba wrap it up for us. Namumba, I'm messing up your name totally. But are you still with us in D.C.? I think he's gone. All right, let's go to Randy on line 5. Randy's calling us from Indiana. Randy, are you concerned?
Hey, Carl, I'll tell you, mark my words on this. They're going to use Trump to either bring us all down or we're all going to benefit together. I'm really concerned that people see him focusing against the black race so much, or being used, because I don't give him credit for power. But I'm really concerned about black people seeing Trump being used, as in conservatism, to be focused against the black race. We're all going to rise or we're all going to sink. And that wouldn't surprise me if we all sank, because I'm not saying it's not beyond the corporate America to knock our feet out from under us real good and once and for all.
Well, let me ask you this, because your reality is different from most of the listeners, because you're white. Let's say that. Are you concerned any at all about Donald Trump?
No. Not a bit. I'm no more about Donald Trump than I was about Hillary or Obama, because I know the corporate machine will kick the feet out from under all of the peasants whenever they want. I'm just saying it's not going to be a Trump. It's going to be when the corporate machine decides. So the presidents had nothing to do with it. But on out of your and Fred's discussion, because it was so enlightening about Indians and the fact that there's no focus on this, what's going on with the Indians under Obama. And Fred said, you ask him, at January 21st, is it going to change? And I didn't even think of that. And I'm going, that's funny, because you know it's going to. And at that time, I hope that when the coverage changes, and look what the Republicans are doing, look what they're using the government to do, I hope we don't fall for that, because we'll have forgotten that how long has this been going on under Obama?
So because again, I put it out there that you have a different reality, but you're saying the corporate folks are going to come in and restructure everything.
I'm saying the corporate folks are going to come in and they're going to make it look like they're going to go against these Indians, and it's a wedge issue. They're not. The media is not on Obama's side. The media is preserving a wedge issue. And that's what we're missing in this, if it happens like that. The media is just holding off, wait till we use it, and you asked also the question you and Fred were discussing, is it natural for the media? Do they just know by instinct? No, they're getting their marching orders to hold off. Don't do this under Obama. Wait till the Republicans come on, and then we can make the Republicans look like bad, mean guys, and then the peasants will fight amongst each other again over what's going on with the Indians. And I hope that when this happens, January 21st, when the media really focuses and says, "Oh my gosh, look here, look what Trump's doing already," I hope we all remember to say, rather than say bad Republicans, I hope we all remember to ask the real question: why in the heck wasn't there no coverage under Obama? Because if that happens like that, it'll be a neon light one of the little things that should lead us to the fact that, man, the corporate machine plays us like suckers at every move. And that's what, do you think it'll be solved by January 21st? What's going on with it? I haven't paid much attention to it, Carl.
Well, I hope this week's supposed to be a big week, but you know what? I go to Dr. Umar has joined us. Randy, I thank you for your call.
All right.
800-450-7876. Dr. Umar Johnson, welcome back to WOL Radio.
Thank you, Carl. Glad to be on.
We were talking to some folks earlier this week. Some people are concerned about Donald Trump, but they're and a lot of anxiety. They're frustrated. They don't know what to expect. Should we be concerned?
Well, here's the thing, and this is the irony of the situation. There's no difference in the Democratic policy towards African Americans versus the Republican policy towards African Americans. See, the Democrats represent the passive party of racism, whereas the Republicans represent the active party of racism, which is to say that under a Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, black people would suffer racism, but the racism would be the result of benign neglect. In other words, President Obama didn't intentionally do anything to hurt African Americans, but he didn't intentionally do anything to help African Americans. So the type of racism we've suffered the past 8 years was due to presidential neglect. Now, what's going to happen under Donald Trump, the Republican wing, which represents aggressive racism, is that you're going to see laws, tactics, behaviors, and policies put in place that deliberately undermine black folks. But at the end of the day, Carl, okay, both types of racism basically disqualifies the other, which is to say that we really will not do worse under Trump than we did under Obama. It's just that it's going to be exaggerated more because it is a Republican administration.
And now, having said that, I know you're going to be in town this weekend. You're saying that the GOP committed a coup d'etat. Do you want to explain that for us?
Oh, without question. Hillary Clinton, first of all, presidents are chosen several years in advance, usually at least 4 years ahead of time. They know who is going to assume the presidency because that is a vote that is taken at the Bilderberg Conference, which is held basically every couple of years, named after Hotel Bilderberg. That's the Committee of 300. That's where the 300 most powerful white men on the planet come together to try to dictate policy for the globe. And part of dictating that policy is choosing the presidential head that they feel can most efficiently carry out their political economic agenda, which is always a racist political economic agenda. Hillary Clinton had met with the Bilderberg. Her husband, Bill Clinton, was a two-time president, also a member of the Bilderberg. She did everything right, Carl. The reason Hillary Clinton did not become president had nothing to do with Hillary Clinton. Let me say that again. Hillary Clinton is not president, not because of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is not president because Barack Obama is the immediate preceding president. White people in America had grown tired and fed up of having to live in a country under a black state. They understand that Obama doesn't represent power. They get that. But for poor white people, the only thing that they had to look forward to was their white privilege. By putting a black person in the White House, you're eating away at the privilege of poor white people. So in cleansing out the White House and getting rid of anything that remotely resembles Obama as a black president, Hillary Clinton had to be thrown under the truck with him because she once served as the Secretary of State, and she's also a member of the same party as Obama, which means, Carl, that no matter who would have ran, it doesn't matter who the Democratic Party would have put up against Donald Trump, and it doesn't matter who the Republican Party would have nominated. This is what people don't understand. This was not about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Even if it was a different set of nominees from each party, you would have still gotten a Republican president because white racist America wanted to make sure that they had thoroughly purged from recent memory anything that had to be associated with a black president.
So you're saying that it was a vote against Hillary and not necessarily for Trump?
It was a vote against Obama, not necessarily a vote against Hillary. For example, white women did not vote for Hillary in the numbers that was anticipated. The reason why is because middle-class white females had to make a decision, Carl. Do we vote for the feminist agenda, or do we vote for a return to obvious white traditional power? That was the decision that they had to make. And it's a lesson that black feminists need to take from this. Because the white woman had to choose. Do I want to go with the woman, or do I want to make sure that we instill traditional white power upon which this country was founded? And white women went with the power over the feminism. They went with the racism. They went with racial politics above gender politics.
Now, if Hillary, you said Hillary and Bill met with the Bilderbergers and they decided that she's going to be a contestant, or they decided that she wasn't going to win, or was all this just a farce?
She was the president. Hillary was the president, but here's the problem. The problem that happened, Carl, was Donald Trump was never supposed to get as far as he did in being able to earn the respect and trust of the American people. He was simply an object to be used on the way to Hillary's coronation. But, as I've been saying during this whole presidential run, I said Donald Trump's support amongst poor white folks is not only unprecedented, it might cause the powers that be to have to reverse their decision. If they try to rob Donald Trump of the presidency, like they did Al Gore in the year 2000, unlike Al Gore, Donald Trump is not going to fade away into the horizon. You will not be able to placate him with a Nobel Peace Prize for saving the environment as they did with Al Gore after stealing his presidency. How many times did you hear Donald Trump say, if y'all rob me of this, I will fight you all the way to the end? The problem with that call was that the power structure had to make a serious decision. If we take this and give it to Hillary, does Donald Trump have the type of support in this country where he could cause a civil unrest? Not necessarily a militaristic one, not necessarily a violent one, but could he cause a serious political coup d'etat in this country where everyday white folks, everyday poor white folks, who are the bulk of the American people, would begin to question the foundations of American democracy? The reason Donald Trump is president is that the power structure feared that if they stole the election and gave it to Hillary, as they did with Gore, then right now America might be going through some type of a significant civil strife. They had to give it to him, Carl. He was too powerful in terms of what white people, he spoke their language. They never expected a white billionaire to be able to relate to poor white folks. And that's exactly what Donald Trump did.
All right. Hold that thought right there, Dr. Umar. We got to take a quick break. We got to check the traffic and the weather in the DMV. And when we come back, I want you to respond to this question. Should we be concerned as black folks? What do we do then? Because you've just laid it out. So what is our response? 800-450-7876. Speak to Dr. Umar Johnson. We'll take your calls after the traffic and weather update on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
1450 WOL Radio.
Thanks for staying with us. Our guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. The number to call, speak to him, 800-450-7876. I'm sort of jumping ahead of myself and asked you what we should do. I want to go back a little bit further, Dr. Umar. So why do you think President Obama was elected? Why was he, or selected, if you will? Why was he put in office, and what was he supposed to achieve over those 8 years?
Definitely. Every president of the United States is given a primary domestic mandate and a primary international mandate. Every president. There's a series of mandates, but there's always one that is primary. Domestically, primary, internationally. For President Barack Obama, his international mandate was to open up Africa to the re-exploitation of its mineral content by Western corporations. George Bush destroyed the relationship that America, France, and the UK had with Africa. And as you know, no country can survive without Africa's resources. So after George Bush's cowboy routine on the continent that turned a lot of African legislatures off, they thought that by putting Obama in office, in fact, getting Africa's resources were so key, Carl, so critically important that they had to put a black man in. That's how critical Africa was. That's why Obama is there. That's how much they needed to make sure they could score a victory for re-exploitation. So Obama was put in, with his father being from Kenya, they felt that would really do the job to make African heads of state comfortable, to put forth the illusion of inclusion that America is now trying to be a little bit more egalitarian around the world. So his international mandate was a success. He succeeded. He accomplished that. Africa has been thoroughly recolonized by America and the other European forces by President Barack Obama. The domestic mandate was to see to it that black people, had their civil rights totally snatched away from them and given to homosexuals, Latinos, and white women. Obama's domestic mandate was, number one, to not only make homosexuality thoroughly accepted in the black community, but to also hold in check all black struggle, all black effort towards progress. And of course, he used Al Sharpton to help him do this, but to hold off on doing anything for black folks long enough to take everything from black folks, the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Act, and give it to gays, women, and Latinos and immigrants. And that's exactly what Obama did. And we stayed silent so long, Carl, under that. For 8 years, black people refused to hold Obama accountable. Even with the police murders of our children, we still refused to make him do anything for us. So after 8 years of black people not doing nothing politically as it relates to the president, it's going to be difficult to hold Donald Trump or anyone after Donald Trump. Let's be clear. Our grandchildren, Carl, our grandchildren will still be suffering from the mistakes that Negroes made during the 8 years of the Obama administration by letting him literally get away with money.
Wow. There's some credence to what you say about opening up Africa, because AFRICOM now has its widest, biggest footprint on the continent ever. And I know you've been traveling. You've been all over Africa. You've been to the Caribbean. You've been to Europe. What are they saying about Barack Obama? Because I know one time they thought he was sort of a messiah. Are they still feeling the same way?
Yes.
They are?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I was in Africa when Obama was running for president. And as you said, I just came back from Africa, and the attitude has totally changed. The attitude has totally changed in many respects. Whereas before, they saw him as a godsend, as a messiah, someone who was going to help redevelop Africa and pull her into the 21st century. It's totally different now. Now, when you go throughout Africa, and I was in Kenya, which is, his father's hometown, and the attitude has totally shifted now. They now see him for what he was, which was a puppet of white supremacy. Obama's job was to take from Africa, and his job was to take from black people all the gains that we had made over the past 50 years. He's taken all that and given it away. And remember, when Obama came into office, Carl, black people were still the priority minority. We were the priority minority up until 2008. Guess what? We are no longer the priority minority. The homosexual movement is in a tug of war with women, and they are in a tug of war with Mexicans and Latinos and other immigrants, for whom the priority minority is going to be under Donald Trump. But it clearly is not black folks. And you see this, Carl, because when you look at the post-election violence that has followed Donald Trump's campaign, when you look on CNN and all these other news outlets, when they talk about racial violence, they're not even showing black people that much. I'm seeing violence against Arabs. I'm seeing violence against homosexuals. I'm seeing violence against European Jews. I'm hardly hearing about violence against black people. We have allowed Obama to remove us as a priority minority.
So having said that, should we be concerned? Because, earlier we did a couple of shows with some folks, and they said they were genuinely concerned about Trump rolling back the situation to the 50s and 60s. You just said that our grandchildren are going to be paying for the mistake that we made. Are you concerned?
Oh, without question. There's two things that come to mind when I think about Donald Trump. Number one, everyone's worried about Donald Trump. He's not the nemesis, Carl. Donald Trump has no political experience. He's never held elected office. You know what that means? That means he's going to be relying on his cabinet. All of Donald Trump's decisions will be made by the cabinet. This will truly be a president by proxy. All of his presidential decisions will be by proxy. I'm concerned about the people he has around him in the cabinet. And let us be clear. Although Rudy Giuliani did not get a post, although Newt Gingrich did not get an official post, although Governor Christie of New Jersey did not get an official post, although former President George W. Bush did not get and did not want an official post, you know that they will be his shadow cabinet, Carl. All of his decisions will be made by some of the kings and queens of white supremacy and white racist America. And that's what I'm most concerned about. Not Donald Trump, but the decisions that he will make that were simply passed to him by those who really dictate policy for the Republican Party. That's number one. Number two, Donald Trump, rightly or wrongly, is being used as a symbol for the reemergence of traditional white racist over male chauvinistic power. That is a concern for me. Not that Donald Trump will have to do anything himself. He has poor white folks who are now re-energized. They feel like they're back in control of America. They're the ones out here spraying swastikas. They're the ones out here beating up our children. I just got a text message yesterday from a brother in Canada. Because it's not just about America, because since America is so powerful, whatever happens here reverberates around the world. I got a text message from a brother in Canada who was jumped on the bus by 4 white folks. Okay, this is part of this post-election violence. So it's not Trump. It's what everyone else is going to do by using him as a symbol for the reemergence of white racist power.
Well, let me ask you the question. And I asked a lot of our scholars this question as well. So why is it always us? I want to get your thoughts. Why is it all picking on us? Are they going after the Latinos? Are they going after the Asians? Why is it? Are we easy pickings? Low-hanging fruit?
Yes,
what is it?
We're easy pickings. We're easy pickings. And part of it is our fault, Carl. Part of that is our fault. Listen, when you know you're about to go into a war, what do? You stock up. If you know that there's about to be a drought, you make sure you put your water together. We did not do that under Obama. Everyone knew, whether it was Trump or someone else, most people knew that the next president would be a Republican because they had to definitely bring about the Obama backlash. White folks were going to demand an Obama backlash, a return to traditional white overrule. Everyone knew this. Gays knew it. Women knew it. Immigrants, Latinos knew it. Everyone knew it. Even black people knew it to an extent. But we did not prepare for life after Obama. So, for example, homosexuals are upset right now, but guess what, Carl? They got 3 laws under Obama. They got over 500 federal appointments from Obama. They got a Supreme Court justice appointed until they decide to retire. The Supreme Court, that is a lifetime appointment. Same thing with the Latinos. They got a Supreme Court justice. White women got a Supreme Court justice. So they knew that the Obama backlash would come, that without question, the next president would be a Republican. So they stocked up on political right and political might. Speaking of power, they stocked up on political right and they stocked up on political might. Black people did not do that. We sat around and we celebrated Obama. We worshiped Obama. We praised Obama, and we castigated and repudiated any black people who said, hey, guys, this is not going to last forever. He is not going to be president forever. This is only 8 years. Let us get something out of this so when it's all over, we can somehow cushion ourselves with the blow that's going to come post-Obama. We should have gotten ready, Carl, for the Obama backlash during the Obama years, and we did not. So as a result of that, we're going to be worse off after Obama than we were before Obama because we did not guarantee ourselves anything during Obama.
Wow. Is there anything that we can do, though, to hold that off?
Here's the good thing. The silver lining in all of this, Carl, there's a silver lining. The silver lining is that the illusion of inclusion is over. The silver lining is that the psychological intoxication that Barack Obama represented to Black America is over. There is no more illusion of inclusion. There is no more rainbow coalition. There is no more can we all just get along. So the good thing now, Carl, is if the police hurt one of our children, we don't have to prove that it was because they were Black. We know it's because they were Black. So the only good thing out of this is that now politics are above ground. Everything is what it is. There's no more Obama deception about what we're really living under. And because of that, that means when we do fight, when we do rally, when we do push for certain concessions, we can do it unapologetically African now because America is back to being what America has always been, an overt basis for aggressive white racism. And that is back on the surface. So now racial politics are back to the forefront. Everyone is going to fight for the best interests of their own people, and we need to start fighting too. We are at the point now, Carl, that if we're not going to be unapologetically African about everything that we're going to do, if we're not going to be bold in our proclamations about how America has treated us, we will not survive this century. I'm concerned that Black people will not survive the 21st century if we do not begin to accept the reality.
Right. Hang on a second, Doc. We got to take this quick break. Sure. Hang on a second. Wow, this is getting deep. 800-450-7876 to speak to Dr. Umar Johnson. We'll take your calls after this short break on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio.
Thanks for rolling with us and our guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. If you're in the DMV, he's going to be here this weekend. We'll let you know where. If you like some of this conversation, folks, you can get it there as well. 800-450-7876. Dr. Umar, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying before we left for the break.
Definitely, Carl. 3 things we have to do during the Trump era. Number one, we have to regain our status as priority minority. And, of course, I hate using the word minority, but I'm just using it within a political context that is used in this country. We have to regain that status. The reason why the homosexuals were able to overtake Black folks as priority minority is because homosexuals are unapologetic about advocating their issues. When you look at Mexicans, Latinos, they are unapologetic about advocating their issues. I heard the earlier caller you were speaking with about the Native American issue. They're unapologetic about advocating their issues. Okay, women, the feminist movement, they are unapologetic. Black people were very apologetic. We felt that we had to stop screaming about Black issues so President Obama could have a comfortable presidency. And guess what? He had a very comfortable presidency at our expense. We made him do nothing. He did nothing. So we got to reclaim that. And the only way we're going to be able to reclaim that is we have to get loud about it. We got to get very, 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 very aggressive about it. We have to definitely be unapologetic now about issues that matter to black folks. And it's going to be a long, hard fight, Carl, because obviously the alibi for not doing nothing for us is obviously going to be, if Obama didn't have to serve black people, why do I? But guess what? That's over with. There's nothing we can do about the mistakes we made in the past. Reclaim priority minority status. Number two, we have to definitely intensify the need for black institutions and organizations. We need infrastructure, and we need it now more than ever. And it's such a coincidence we're discussing that now, Carl, because as you know, this is one of my worst times of the year, because this is when black people all over America purge billions of dollars on unnecessary junk in the name of Jesus Christ, and that the effects of this shopping frenzy is going to reverberate in our community and reverberate in other people's community. It is absolutely insane that in Philadelphia, we're going to spend $3 billion on Christmas. New York City is going to spend over $10 billion on Christmas. Houston, Texas is going to spend over $10 billion on Christmas. But we don't have supermarkets, we don't have schools, we don't have hospitals, we don't have gas stations. How can you spend this type of money on useless gifts? Most of those gifts, neither you nor your children will even be bothered with them 30 days after Christmas. And in doing this, not only are you wasting the money, Carl, you're giving the money to other people to put them in a stronger position to come back and oppress you even more. You're giving the Jews more money to gentrify your community. You're giving the Latinos more money to take over your businesses. You're giving the Arabs and the East Indians more money to continue to liquidate the assets of your community. Not only are we hemorrhaging the money, we're giving it to the exact same people who are in competition with us for dominance of the American political economy. So, two, intensify infrastructure building. And number three, Carl, is unity. We have to strike a foundation where we can stop fighting each other over superficial and petty differences. Now is the time to unite, because guess what? If we conduct ourselves the same way during the Trump administration that we did under the Obama administration, without question, this will be our last century ever in America. So this right here is a crossroads point for black people to unify, a crossroads point for black people to change in a significant way our economic behavior, and it is a crossroads moment for black people to reclaim priority minority status.
All right, before we go to calls, we had a guest on, I think it was yesterday, Brother Pascal Roybert, and he says this is a great time for us now to come up with a new crop of black leaders, because the old group doesn't count. Your thoughts on that? Is this a great opportunity?
Well, it's not that they don't count, it's that most of them are at an age now where their ability to hold the attention of the youth have passed. We know that all revolutions are made by the people, and those revolutions are actually made by the youngest amongst those people. So you look at Dr. King, you look at Stokely, you look at Malcolm, you look at Medgar, you look at Huey. Most of them were young, and even as they aged, they still were able to keep the attention, of the youth. Al Sharpton can no longer do that. Jesse Jackson can no longer do that. Minister Farrakhan is going to begin to have to look at other leadership with the Nation of Islam to be able to keep the attention of the youth, although he does a better job than all of the other leaders nationally in keeping the attention of the youth. But yes, he's absolutely correct. It's not that they're necessarily no longer valid, it's that they no longer have the type of influence amongst the masses. You're dealing with millennials now. You're dealing with Generation X. They don't really know about the Black Power movement. They wasn't there for the civil rights struggle. Many of them know very little about slavery itself because it's no longer being taught in schools. But so because you're dealing with a new generation of youth, a millennial generation of youth, you're going to need a millennial leadership that can galvanize that young energy into constructive channels.
All right, 800-450-7876, line 4. Nabuda, you have a question for Dr. Umar?
Yes. Hey, y'all, look here. They say we're going to let you know from the top people, the rich people from the White House down to the street. They say, and they say that y'all old leaders, we're going to let y'all know what we can do. They say, look, they let the man go in, somebody got into the White House, no dogs attacked. They said we could have been knocked him. We letting y'all know that he's not protected. And then down to the lower class, the street people, we're going to let y'all youth know this. We can shoot y'all in the head anytime you want to.
Nabuda, do us a favor. Put in a question for him so he can respond.
So, I mean, what do you, I mean, and Anaheim said the same thing. They can knock you off, and they got machines that like X-rays. They can, any leader that step out there, a group or single, they can kill you. Do you agree with that, Dr. Umar?
Well, without question, we do know that the repression against African Americans is going to be greater as we do try to reclaim that priority minority status, because what America wants to do going forward is they want to take black people off the table of political discussion. Not only will that be one less minority group that they have to deal with, it's also the most significant minority group that they will no longer have to deal with. You take African Americans off the table, you don't have to deal with mass incarceration. You take African Americans off the table of discussion, you don't have to deal with reparations. You don't have to deal with miseducation. You don't have to deal with poor health care to the extent that is taking place. So by removing us off the table of discussion, it saves America a whole lot of headache as it relates to being accountable about the things that matter to us. That's also why you see an intensification to get our young people, to get our millennials and our Generation X's to identify with other movements. This is why they want homosexual black men and women to identify with the homosexual movement instead of black people. They want sisters to identify with the feminist movement instead of black people. They want our young people to identify as middle class as opposed to being identified with black people, identify as poor. But they've given us all these different identities, and all these different political groups are intensifying their recruitment of black people. We have more black people registered in both the Democratic and the Republican Party than before, because they're trying to give us alternative identities so the black identity can die.
All right, 800-450-7876. Line 5, Roy's calling us from Fort Washington in Maryland. Roy, you have a question for Dr. Umar?
Well, Carl, this is more focused toward your original statement. Do we have any concern with Donald Trump? And I do. My concern is more of him as a commander-in-chief. Let me give just a little simple example. It was something that he tweeted out this week that is more significant than people think it is. Say, for example, if the old adage, if you got a general and he's walking out of the building and he looks and he see the flag and he see these rocks and he makes a statement, I wish those rocks were red, white, and blue. The colonel that walked out with that general going to turn to that senior sergeant and say, hey, we want those rocks red, white, and blue. Sergeant's going to go get some privates. Next morning, the general come out, those rocks are red, white, and blue. Donald Trump tweeted out that Americans that burn the flag should do a year in jail, lose their citizenship. If Donald Trump makes a statement like that as president at a press conference, his chief of staff or somebody going to call back, and you got these PhD, Ivy League grads, staffers, and that they're going to get busy, and they're going to write a policy, and this policy and will hold up in any court in the U.S. And you got these, I'll just say, the Center for Patriotic Americans. These guys are the same with all political grads. And the next morning, Donald Trump wakes up, he's got an executive order on his desk that'll stand up in any court in America that would send people to jail for burning the flag.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond to that. I hear your concerns, Roy. The Second Amendment, and we talked about this before you got on, Dr. Umar, about how he seems to have control of the media. Is that a concern about you? People will be afraid to express themselves, like Roy mentioned, or just, burn the flag. You can do whatever you want to do. That's part of the Constitution.
I don't think that there will be, okay, let me take this back. I could potentially see a situation where the Trump administration, as part of this whole return to white glory movement, I could see a situation where the Supreme Court is asked to deliberate on whether or not protecting the burning of the U.S. flag, or whether or not that could be exempted from Second Amendment rights. So, for example, the Pledge of Allegiance is an example of a custom, if you would, in America that is exempted, from separation of church and state. Even though the word God is in the Pledge of Allegiance is allowed to be stated. So there is a precedent of having certain customs and rituals and even laws and policies in place that do contradict the language of the Bill of Rights. So I could potentially see something happen like that. I could see it. But Black people, we don't have a history of burning the flag. And for me, I'm really not interested in symbolic gestures of power, because as Black people, we wrote the book on symbolic gesturing for power. We need to get involved in actual manifestations that reflect the power that we have within ourselves. I'm tired of the symbolism and the empty rituals. I say it all the time that the black community, especially the black conscious community, is like another religion. Two things you get in religion. You only have to show up and you have to participate in the rituals, and you can be Christian. Show up and participate in the rituals. You are a Muslim.
Hang on a second, Doc. We got to take a quick break here. Check the traffic and weather in the DMV. 800-450-7876. Speak to Dr. Umar Johnson. Taking calls after the traffic and weather update on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
Thanks for staying with us, and our guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. As I mentioned, he's going to be in the DMV area this weekend. I'll let you know where, or he'll let you know where before he leaves. 800-450-7876 is the number to call to speak to him. Before we go back to him, just to remind you, coming up in the next few days, metaphysician Dr. B is going to join us. Also, holistic doctor Stephen Tates from Atlanta is going to be here. Haitian activist and attorney Danto Zil. Also, educator Dr. Walter Williams. Dr. Walter Williams has a bet out there. If anybody can prove that person by the name of Jesus the Christ or Muhammad, the prophet, actually walked on this face of the earth, he'll give them, I think he's up to about $10,000, and he's had that bet out there for like 20 years now. So he's going to join us in the next few days. Let's go back to Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar, I'm going to let you finish up your response.
Yes, sir, Carl. I was saying that basically within the black consciousness community, we operate pretty much like a religion. In order to be a person, a member of a particular religion in good standing, all you have to do is show up and participate in the rituals. Go to church, participate in the rituals. Go to the mosque, go to Friday prayer, participate in the rituals. Go to Easter, Christmas service. We do the same thing. We just show up to different events and we participate in the rituals. Kwanzaa, Black History Month, the different festivals and the lectures, but there's no organization taking place. Same thing in the religions, and that's not going to serve us. Even with scholars, I think we have to be more accountable with scholars within the conscious community. No scholar can be a free agent. You cannot be a free agent. And what I mean by that is you must be attached to an organization that is engaged in some sort of meaningful enterprise to transform the realities of black people, which means it has to be about more than information and dissemination of that information. Are you working together to put something together for the youth? Are you working together to create some economic engines? But it has to be something about more than making money and disseminating information, because if that's all we're going to do, then we become no different than the megachurch priests that we love to condemn, which is why for me, I got the college tour coming up this summer. Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, a couple schools now that I'm seriously considering making the purchase, because in 2017, I've decided we must have the school. We got the repatriation task force that we're going to be doing in Africa. I got about 10 different programs that I'm working on that I don't make any money from, that is designed to help our people. Every scholar should have the same thing, even if they're an elder or youth. You can no longer go around collecting money, giving out information. If you want to be a preacher, then go start a church.
800-450-7876, line 3. David, you have a question for Dr. Umar? David, where are you calling from? I'm not seeing a city.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Carl. I'm David from San Francisco.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And by the way, I hope you got a podcast for today, because the stream there's a huge amount of static. So I hope your copy is better than what's coming out over the air or over the stream.
Right,
I agree and disagree with your guest on a bunch of things. I think he's only looking at kind of like the overseer's view as opposed to the really bigger picture, because I see the Klan are going to fight with the Nazis, and the Nazis are not good enough for the aristocrats, and these fat cats are going to play them like chumps that they are. And in the big picture, if you remember, Oliver North was trying to milk the FEMA. And the reason FEMA didn't do any good down in Katrina was because FEMA is actually looking out for the military-industrial complex, and they want to use weather as a weapon. And they want to use every natural disaster with global warming as an ability to capture more land. So when you start looking at people like Donald Trump, who's a land developer, if you start looking at Donald Trump as a guy who's going to take advantage of a Katrina and steal everybody's land, white, black, Hispanic, everybody's going to lose from a developer who's going to take advantage of FEMA. So in the big picture, we got to look at these guys are piranhas, and once the piranhas have eaten some of the stuff, they're going to start eating each other. And in the big picture, the way to get rid of them is to create our own money, and we can make them broke overnight. And the example of this was Valley Forge. Washington was freezing at Valley Forge because they couldn't even afford to buy firewood with a continental dollar. That the British had counterfeited the money to such a degree that nobody could trust the Continental anymore. Well, Ben Franklin got out the printing press, and they made a different design of the money, and the Patriots were able to keep going, and the traders had to use the old money. So, if Donald Trump and his Jamie Dimon Treasury appointments are going to make the official news, we got to create our own news. We got to create our own life. We got to ignore their joke.
Right. David, do us a favor. Put in a question for him so he can respond.
Oh, well, I just, that's kind of the bigger picture. Look at the aristocrats, the ancient three estates, the money, the military, and the church as they've been playing us against each other for centuries, and this is just another example of the ancient three estates, the king, the church, and the military playing games with our lives.
All right, let's get him to respond to that. Thanks, David. David calls from San Francisco.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with the part of his argument that with the Nazis, with the White Brotherhood, with the KKK, that there's going to be a jockeying for power within the social structure of America. I agree with that because white people have always fought with each other. They have never been this utopian type of a community. No race has, for that matter. So there's always been challenges between the Irish and the Italian. There's always been challenges between the Jew and the Anglo-Saxon. But the point that has to be underscored, though, is that at the end of the day, when it comes to making sure that white power is still in control and making sure that black people are still politically and economically powerless, white people will put an end to the fight temporarily, long enough to look out for the best interests of white people. And so that's the thing that has to be kept in mind. Even though they will fight, they will never fight long enough or bad enough to allow another race to come in and take over. The same thing holds true for Asians. We understand that Chinese and Japanese don't necessarily get along, North Korea, South Korea, so forth and so on. But guess what? When it comes to looking out for the best interest of Asian people, there is a time out that is called to the internal petty differences long enough to see to it that the race is not destabilized by internal conflict. And we as Africans, because of our self-hate, which has been inoculated in us, it's all learned behavior. And that's the other thing, Carl. 75% of how we think and act is all learned behavior, transmitted intergenerationally from the end of slavery all the way to today. We have not changed one iota as it relates to our political economic thinking. We think as slaves did 150 years ago. But the part that I do disagree with is you cannot end this or end the control of the power structure simply by counterfeiting the money or shutting down the money, because most money is electronic. Everything is on the card. Everything is in the bank. So because that's one of the reasons why they create the electronic form of tracking money so that they can have a check on counterfeit. So I don't necessarily think that strategy is going to work. But the one thing I did want to say, Carl, going back to a question you asked earlier, one thing that will seriously be undermined during the Trump administration, and it began in the Obama administration, and that is public education. Donald Trump's selection for Secretary of Education is a supporter of charter school, a supporter of vouchers, and I really think that we're going to see an intensification of the public school shutdown movement that started with George Bush, which increased under Barack Obama, and now is going to go to an even greater level of Donald Trump. So there's that one thing that I really do see will get obviously worse. Will be the state of public education for black children.
Well, let me ask you this, because you're also an educator. So do you think, because some people say that it's good, so we can have our own black schools. Voucher schools, we'll have our own independent black schools.
Okay, here's the problem with that. Okay, you're going to have to be certified to receive voucher funding. So, for example, Carl, if I go and open up a independent, a private school for special ed kids. Okay, I'm servicing boys with ADHD. Okay, and they have a voucher system that says the special ed parent can take the money from the public school and take it over to Dr. Umar Johnson's Fred Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy for ADHD black boys. Well, guess what? In order for me to receive that money, I have to be certified by the state, certified by the school district. In other words, they have to come out and inspect me and decide that they think my school would be a good place for those children, which means that they can make it difficult for that money to come to flow into our hands. We got to understand something. The weapon of white privilege is discrimination. The weapon of white privilege is discrimination. So if white people are looking to capitalize on these voucher dollars, that means they have to create a system of discrimination that doesn't allow black people to access that money as well as they do. And because of that, we cannot look at that as a positive thing for us, because even though they say it is equal opportunity for all, when has it ever been the case for us in America?
All right, 800-450-7876. We've got folks all over the country who want to speak to you. Let's go to Arlington, Texas. Lawrence is calling us on line 2. Lawrence, you have a question for Dr. Umar?
Sure I do, Carl. Hey, Carl, thanks for taking my call today. Hey, Dr. Umar, how you doing today, my brother?
How's it going, my brother?
Hey, man, another day in the struggle. I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have to struggle. But, Dr. Umar, familiar with your philosophy on our black plight in America. You get no argument from me on nothing you said. I've watched a lot of your dissertations on YouTube. I agree. I've even had other people come and sit down and listen to some of your speeches on YouTube where you've given at different locales around the country. Everybody walks away saying, that brother knows what he's talking about. That brother is bad. And I point something out. I say, if that brother is bad, y'all agree with him, I agree with him, then why is it Obama and all these black congressional caucus leaders and all these black millionaires in our community don't get behind black men like him, Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. William Lee, Dr. Boyce Watson, I just go on and on and on. All you black men and women who are the real leaders, this is the question I pose to you, Dr. Umar. I am not as humanitarian as you are. I'm not. I feel that Donald Trump, and I supported him for the simple reason that he wasn't going to do nothing for us, that he wasn't going to lie to us, that he was just going to make it raw and simple. I'm not going to do nothing for you. I don't like you. I don't care about you, and I'm not going to make it pretty. That's why I voted for him, because black folks need a wake-up call. The question to you is this, Dr. Umar. Now, this is something that I have, if there's any disagreement with you and all the other intellectuals that I mentioned that I respect and agree with, this is the only difference in agreement. I don't have, me and you, we don't agree on this one point. And I know none of y'all agree with me on this. I'm 59 years old. I'm a blue-collar person. I'm from Flint, Michigan, Dr. Umar. I'm still involved in union politics, UAW politics.
All right, Lawrence, get to the question because we're coming up on a break.
Okay, here's the question. Dr. Umar, don't you feel it's high time for us to just kick butt and take names in our own community? Let's call these sellouts, these house Negroes. Let's have a revolution inside black America. Let's purge our ranks of all these no-good blacks who ain't did nothing for us. Don't you think it's time for us to go there? Don't you think this is the time?
All right. Thanks, Lawrence. Dr. Umar.
I definitely think it's time for a revolution within the black community. I agree with you. Here's the challenge, though. Upon what criteria, what universally established criteria do we have to determine, objectively, without emotion and personal bias, who is loyal and who is not? That is always the central contradiction in most revolutions. Those who are in control of the revolution tend to determine and dictate who the loyalists are and who the loyal are not. And in many cases, those who are considered not to be loyal may have been the most loyal of all.
All right, hang on a sec, Doc. We got to take a quick break. As I mentioned, we're closing in on the top of the hour. Folks, you too can join the conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson. Reach out to us, 800-450-7876. As the big show rolls on from the capital city on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
U240 DJ, Washington, 95.9. WPRS HD2 Waldorf. WKYS HD2 Washington. WMMJ HD2 Bethesda. And worldwide at WOLDCnews.com. The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for staying with us. Our guest is Dr. Umar Johnson. Again, the number to call, speak to him, 800-450-7876. And he's going to be in town, I mentioned this weekend, at the Thurgood Marshall Center. So, Dr. Umar, I'm going to let you finish up your answer because I know folks are driving home from work right now. If you can tell, when you finish, you can tell them where they can be able to see you this weekend.
Definitely, Carl. One of the things that I was saying was that although we need to have an internal revolution within the black community to separate those who are serious and sincere from those who are not, it's going to be difficult to do that because we don't have a set of criteria that everyone agrees upon. The other problem also is that in the black community, you no longer have the rule of principle. You have the rule of personality. So there's people who are going to be loyal to certain people just because they have a relationship with them, irrespective of whether or not they truly believe that their work is in the best interest of black folk. And as long as we have the rule of personality over the rule of principle, it's going to be very difficult to politically purge those forces from leadership in our community who don't mean right. We are more loyal to our friends than we are to those who are about the work. And until you transform that mindset, it'll be difficult to have that internal revolution.
Wow, that's deep. First time I heard that mentioned that way. Okay, tell us where you're going to be this weekend. I know it's going to be at Thurgood Marshall, but when?
Yes, at the Thurgood Marshall Center on Sunday, December the 4th, 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. program. Doors open up at 4. We will have vendors there as well. Folks can get the tickets online, princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. And, of course, if they need the flyer for Sunday, they can text me for 215-989-9858, 215-989-9858. They can also email me for it, Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com. And just also let the people know who are listening, I'll be in Elizabeth, New Jersey, next Saturday, December 10th, Queens, New York City on Sunday, December the 11th, and then it's the Kwanzaa Tour, Jacksonville, Florida, December the 28th, Detroit, Michigan, December the 30th, and then Atlanta, Georgia, January the 1st, and then off to Los Angeles, California for Saturday, January the 7th. And anyone can reach out to me for flyers to any of those events.
All right, great, because the LA folks just text me and want to know when you were coming to town, so I'm glad you answered that one for them. 800-450-7876. Let's go to Cincinnati, Ohio, on line 4. Monica's calling us. Monica, you're on with Dr. Umar.
Good evening. How are you both?
Good evening.
I just wanted to address something that I heard you say I think a few minutes ago, just about how to recognize who amongst our people are the people who are doing the work, or who we can trust and entrust with the work of our people, all the things that we need done. And I do agree that it can be challenging in doing so, because there's so many different factions from all over the place. And as you so eloquently stated earlier, you know, it's almost like the mega church thing where people get together, they have this sort of cathartic release because we all got together, we all talked about it, and then we go home, and then, you know, the next crisis arises and we get together again. But I want to ask you, I heard you speak, I think, not this last year, but year before last, at the Power Talk series. And one of the things I wanted to know is if you were familiar with the 1 million conscious and conscientious Black contributors and voters, because I think we address a lot of the stuff that you're talking about in terms of finding credible, reliable leadership that has integrity, and not only integrity, but a plan. I think a lot of times we just don't have a plan, or we only have a plan. We don't have the execution of the plan. So I'm curious to know if you have availed yourself of the 1 million yet.
There's a lot of things that I haven't had a chance to avail myself of. I've heard the name, but I haven't had an opportunity to look into it. So if you have information that you can send to me, email-wise or otherwise, I'll definitely be willing to take a look at that.
Absolutely. If you would be willing to share your email address, or I can text you, however you want me to get the information to you. I can give you our website right quick, which is www.iamoneofthemillion.com. But I'll be more than happy to send you more detailed information. And I think one of the things that you've talked about, I think I heard you say, is that we as a people, we need to, whether it's challenging or not, we need to recognize people who are doing the work versus people who may or may not have the personality, as you put earlier. I think that's a really good assessment. But when you have a movement like the 1 million, where we have taken really all these areas, these various factions, we recognize that public policy is a driver for politics. And we've addressed that with public policy planks that really impact our communities. Not only that, we recognize that without money, without economic empowerment, we can talk public policy all day. But I think you can agree with me that we need to have an economic empowerment movement in the Black community to marry those two together so we can get the things that we want. So if you would give me your number, I'd be happy to text you, happy to talk to you, because we are really serious about what we're doing. We have gathered some of the best and the brightest of our people from around this country. Leaders and just ladies.
Your movement is it an independent movement, or is it a movement that seeks to get funding from the government and other white corporations?
Oh no, solely Black led. We have no
Black finance.
I'm gonna use the term collusion. Black finance.
Okay.
Correct.
No
Black finance. There's no collusion.
Let me give you the number, sis. Let me get a number. 215-989-9858.
215-98.
9858. Yes, 989-9858.
I'll be happy to give you a call. I appreciate so much you listening, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you.
800-450-7876. Go across the border, Ontario, Canada. Rick's calling us on line 5. Rick, you're on with Umar Johnson. Do you have a question for the doctor?
I don't have a question as much as I do a comment. And, it is almost as though we live in an alternate universe, and I'm speaking of Black people here in America. It's a very subtle plan against us, but it's a very deliberate one. And we seem to think that somehow the inevitable is not inevitable. People speak about Nazis and Germans and white supremacists, but, the American slave plantation system is what the Nazis built their death camps on. It's not the other way around. That is to say that the American system was the prototype for Nazi Germany. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Welsing even alluded to that, but it's right there in the book. But here's the thing. We seem to be so emotional and so pie in the sky in our, I don't even know what the word is, simplicity, thinking that life doesn't have consequences and that there are not sacrifices that are necessary in order to continue life. We're going to have a lot of casualties, and I'm of the mind that I'm not going to try to save everybody. I want to save people, and I want to be saved by people who really want to change things. If I never see another Black person dance in my life, it won't be too soon, because we spend so much time and energy on superficial, serious, really just entertainment. When white folks take their children out and they take them to firing ranges and they teach them how to make ad hoc weapons, they teach them how to patrol perimeters, they teach them to be soldiers, they teach them to live in the woods, they teach them all kinds of things that we could do. But we seem to think that there's a political party somewhere that's going to fly out of heaven on a white horse, of course, and save us. And there has not been a successful revolution that has ever occurred, whether social, military, or whatever, did not include ground soldiers, people that were actually willing to die. They realized that was a very strong potential that they would die, but the cause that they would die for would be greater than the effect of their life. And so I really do find that, and there are a lot of people in media. Goebbels in Germany, you're talking about the media being with Trump. It was Goebbels that really was the force behind the Nazi Party. Goebbels ran the media for Hitler.
And it was because of his influence on the thinking.
Rick, we're coming up on a break real soon. Can you put in a question for him so he can respond, though?
I have a question.
Okay. All right, let's let him give a chance to respond because you put a lot on the plate right there. Dr. Umar?
Yes, sir. Well, I agree with him. I definitely believe that there's going to be casualties, but I also think we have to be very, very cautious and distinctive in terms of who those casualties are going to be. I think that everybody is not going to come along for the ride, and I would even guesstimate that of the living, breathing, adult African Americans in this country, no more than 40% of them are of any use to us as it relates to bringing about the significant changes politically, economically, and otherwise to regenerate ourselves. I really believe that at least 60% of the living black folk in this country are no use to us. They are in love with white Jesus. They are in love with white people. All they want to do is party, compete with each other, waste money, and foster negativity. So I agree with him on, but I also think that the program to bring that whole movement about has to be thought out a little bit better. And the sister was also correct in the previous call that we have to begin to organize ourselves economically in order to change our political narrative. But black people do not have a culture in this country of using their economic wealth to transform their political reality. That is something that is foreign to us. It is alien to us. But now it must become familiar to us, because if we don't learn how to do that, then again, our days in the future will be numbered.
So how do we change that around there? How do we flip that?
Well, number one, I think we got to start with the children. I really am going to go back to my premise that we should be spending 75% of our attention on those who are 25 years of age or younger. We still have a very outdated, dysfunctional model of bringing consciousness to people. We love to focus on adults. I've been in so many political meetings where I've heard adults, even leaders, pastors, as well as leaders in the conscious community, say they really don't want to be bothered with children because children don't like to listen. They're too active. They're too hard-headed, this, that, or whatever. But that is your future. And so for me, we can
hang on a second, Doc. We got to take our last look at the traffic and weather here. I'll let you finish that. This is an interesting conversation. Folks, call your friends and tell them to join us right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Back to the Carl Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
Thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Dr. Umar Johnson. He's going to be in the DMV on Sunday at Thurgood Marshall Center, and so we'll tell you more about that. But Dr. Umar, we'll let you finish up what you were saying in response to that last call.
Yes, Carl. I believe that we have to spend more time educating the children on issues that are critical to us as a people. In fact, when you look at us as scholars, a lot of us do not speak to the youth. 95% of the time when we speak, it's to adults, if we ever get to youth at all, failing to realize that those things that we discuss that need to be done are not likely to be implemented by the adults, because black people have a psychological block. And that block relates to our lack of commitment for ourselves. And until that changes, it'll be difficult to get a sizable number of black adults involved in our movement. We have to get the youth. They are young, they are courageous, they are energetic, they are idealistic. They are the ones that carry this forward. But a lot of us are not focusing on the youth because it's not as convenient as it is to focus on the adults. But that's where the attention needs to go.
You said earlier that 60% of us are so in love with white folks. We're not going to go along with the program. We just need to just sort of rule them out. I think that was a response to Monica's question. How do we identify that 60% of us who are under the illusion of inclusion?
You know what, Carl? That's why I think that's one of the reasons why we have to have a universal protocol, a universal system of assessment and evaluation, because that'll be one of the quickest ways to start a civil war amongst black people. Something like that will trigger a serious black-on-black war once you start determining who is and who is not fit for the revolution. People's emotions are involved in that. People's egos are involved in that. And that is something that can really spur a whole bunch of tribalism, sectionalism, and separatism. So when it comes to things like that, and of course, the Elder Newly Fuller, he talked about a lot about this in his compensatory code book, but whenever you start talking about separating people out, the potential loss of life, potential harm that can come to people, those things have to be taken very, very seriously, and a lot of people need to be involved when you do something like that. So, for example, if you have Dr. Umar Johnson come up with that system by himself, I'm going to decide who's sincere and who's not sincere. That in and of itself is not sincere, because no one person can create that type of a protocol. And even if they could intellectually create that protocol, do they have the courage to actually use that same protocol to evaluate their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their fathers? Because everyone loves to evaluate people who are not inside of our inner circle. But do you still have that type of integrity to evaluate the people who you love and care about? And that's where the differences come in. And that's why we need a collective leadership team, a collective leadership board to create that type of a system, because it's very, very important. It is very, very necessary, but it can also be very, very dangerous.
So do you think we need a council of elders, or would you put some young people on there as well?
Without question, you need a council of elders. Without question, we are long overdue for that. But even with the council of elders, Carl, I think we need to do a very good job of choosing who's going to be on that council, because I can tell you, traveling as much as I do in African communities around the world, a lot of elders do not belong on that council, because a lot of them do not have the integrity that allows them to evaluate people in their circle the same way that they can evaluate people outside of their circle. And I hate to say that, but we have to be honest that just because we turn 65 years old, our personality, our level of character and integrity does not automatically transform. The people we were at 45, we can be those same people at 65 if we don't work on ourselves. Psychologically, I always say that the one thing that does not age just because you do is your character and your personality. Your body will age, okay, your car will age, your business will age, your marriage will age, but guess what? Psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, you can still be a 5-year-old trapped in a 65-year-old body. So we need to do our due diligence when we start selecting those elders.
800-450-7876. Don is reaching out to us on line 1 from Maryland. Don, you have a question for Dr. Umar.
Yeah, Dr. Umar, do you know about and what do you think about Obama's Executive Order 13603 authorizes slavery in the U.S.? Thank you. I'll take it off.
Yes, sir. I'm familiar with those executive orders, but let us be clear about something. There's something that supersedes the law, and that's power. So even if there was no executive order to sanction slavery in America, if that is the will of the dominant group, then that is exactly what's going to happen to the minority groups who are not organized and prepared for those situations. And this is why I honor the work and legacy of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey so much, because he constantly reminded us that we have to be prepared for the things that white America might decide to do at a second's notice. Most of the time, we're talking about things that we've seen coming down the pike for a few years. We've seen it coming down the pike for a few decades. But what about things that might just decide to happen tomorrow, different initiatives and dangerous policies that they might put in place at a second's notice? Because we know in the event of social unrest, the National Security Agency will actually run this country, not the President of the United States. So they can make all sorts of dangerous and important policy and security decisions that affect everyone in this country, especially black folks. Are we prepared for that? Garvey said, be prepared. And that's our biggest issue, Carl. We are not prepared for nothing. We're not prepared for the closing down of public education. We are not prepared for the martial law that's on its way. We are not prepared politically and economically for the things that are coming down the pipe. We are not a prepared people. And one of the reasons why we are not prepared, it is difficult to prepare for anything when you really don't care about the other people involved.
Wow, that's deep. And back to the question about executive orders, because one of Trump's insiders are telling him to throw out all of the executive orders, especially the ones that Barack Obama signed. Should we be concerned about that?
Well, I think they will throw out a lot of the executive orders that had to do with how federal funds would be spent. But I think I'm pretty certain that most of the executive orders that deal with militia, that deal with emergency containment, national security, concentration camps, I'm quite certain all of those will stand, because many of them were around even before Obama, and he didn't even undo those. So the ones that are the most critical and most dangerous towards black folk, they precede the Obama administration, and I doubt very seriously that they will ever be thrown out.
All right, 800-450-7876. Go to L.A. on line 3. Brother Fixico. Brother Fixico, you have a question for Dr. Umar.
Yes, I do. Greetings, Brother Carl and Dr. Umar. I'm a Seminole Maroon activist featured in the Smithsonian Institution, and 1 month ago, I was invited by the United States government to participate in a ceremony where the government, after 200 years, recognized the Fort Negro Battle and Massacre. I did take part in that ceremony, and it was video. My question to you, Dr. Umar, was that evidence that there are some in power that will pursue not reparations, but at least reconciliation with African American and indigenous people's history?
Well, here's the thing, though. They may reconcile with your history, but is that sufficient enough for us as the people, given what we've gone through? For me, there is no type of reconciliation that can be either genuine or complete that does not include reparations. For me, reparations is the foundation of reconciliation. Without that financial and political payment of damages, then the whole reconciliation or reparation movement becomes a emotional, sympathetic type of a thing. It's a cathartic thing where your oppressors simply say that I'm sorry, and I'm not interested in psychological reparations. Obama was psychological reparations. The Civil Rights Bill was psychological reparations. I'm not interested in psychological reparations because our kids cannot eat that. Our kids cannot breathe that. They cannot build that. They cannot spin that. We need to get something concrete above and beyond the emotional and the psychological.
Another very brief question, Dr. Umar. I have been thinking if we came together in a cultural renaissance similar to the Harlem Renaissance, except instead of using the new Negro as our role models, we use African American or African and indigenous people freedom fighters. Do you think that we could then have some type of paradigm for at least coming together and expressing through the humanities, what we have inside of us?
Oh, without question. And I definitely think that we are in desperate need. Africans all around the world. In fact, I had this conversation in Jamaica for Garvey Day, and I had it week before last in Turks and Caicos Islands in Grand Turk. We need to have another cultural renaissance like the Harlem Renaissance because, as Marcus Garvey said, we have to sell black people to themselves. We have to sell our greatness back to our people because we do not believe in ourselves. So I definitely believe we need to have a cultural renaissance. That is the one thing that is missing. And the conscious community has to understand that what we're doing is not a cultural renaissance. We're simply disseminating information, but we are not honoring and promoting black art. We are not honoring and promoting black beauty. We are not honoring and promoting black intelligence. We are simply disseminating information. When you talk about a cultural renaissance, you are talking about an aesthetic where the sound as well as the images that black people are bombarded with are culturally and spiritually reaffirming to themselves. We need that badly.
All right. Thanks, Mexico.
Thank you, Brother Carl and Dr. Umar, very much. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Umar, a tweet from Houston. Want to know when you coming to town, Houston, Texas.
I was in Houston about 2-3 months ago. I don't think it was well advertised. I'm going to look to come back to Houston trying to Black Madonna in February. So I'll be back in Houston in February.
All right. 800-450-7876. I know we're coming up on a break. See if we can get Joe on line 5 from the district. Joe, you have a question for Dr. Umar?
Now, just a quick statement, Carl, and greetings to both of you. I appreciate the comments about the cognitive and emotional development and the blockers that Dr. Umar is speaking of. The other thing is I want to encourage when people are meeting with the young people, because I specialize in that, make sure that the meeting and the discussion is interactive with our young people. Our young people struggle with attention, their attention span, and nobody knows that better than Dr. Johnson. We can't sit and lecture to our young people. We've got to make sure when we're engaging them that we're engaging them in an interactive format. And just want to hear what his thoughts are on that.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, we got to take a quick break. I'll let the Dr. Umar respond on the other side. Folks, you too can join the discussion. Reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
L Radio.
Thanks for rolling with us and our guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. As I mentioned, he's going to be in the DMV, and before he goes, I'll let him tell you what cities he's going to be in, and hopefully the dates as well. When you hear people like Dr. Umar comes to town, you've got to go and see them, folks, because a lot of stuff that we talk about on the radio, we can't talk about on the radio. Actually, we can talk about in person. But anyway, I'm going to let you finish responding to Joe from the district, who called us about our young people. And having said that, what Joe said too, because Dr. Umar, there was a group of students in the district who walked out of class because of Donald Trump, presidency. There was a sort of a protest, and some people didn't agree with their actions. So I just want to get your thoughts on that and what Joe also said.
Well, first of all, Joe is right on the money. He's absolutely correct. We need to be interactive with the youth. They're tired of being lectured to. They hear that enough. They're not interested in that churchical mode of instruction and learning. We have to be interactive with them. And also, Carl, let your listeners know that this summer, June 28th to July 12th, I will be hosting the second annual Black College and Consciousness Tour for 11 to 17-year-old boys and girls. Last year, we started and finished in New York. We did the Northeastern schools, the Lincolns, the Cheneys, the Howard, the Hamptons. But this year, we're going to start and finish in Atlanta. So we'll be doing the Morehouse, the Spelmans, the Fisk, the Tuskegees, the South Carolina States, and so forth and so on. So if anyone's interested, they have a son or daughter 11 to 17, and they want them to go on a Black College of Consciousness Tour, please send me an email through drumarjohnson.com. We'll also be visiting the National Civil Rights Museum, the Dr. King Center, the Oyotunji African Village, the Charleston, South Carolina Boat Trail. There's a whole lot that they'll get to learn and see in addition to just going to the colleges and universities. They really loved it last year. We took them to the Nat Turner Trail, Dorney Park, Great Adventures. We played paintball. So it's a lot of fun involved in the learning, and I'm really looking forward to this year's tour. Again, June 28th to July 12th, and that'll be Atlanta, Georgia.
All right, and the young people, some of them who walked out of the classes protesting, and some...
I'm glad they did that. One of the biggest challenges we have in the Black community right now, Carl, is whether or not we want our young children to be radical or whether we want them to be conformists. And see that the issue here, Carl, is that the adults are no longer radical. Once we went to college and got our education and got our jobs and bought our house in the suburbs, we became conformists. And see, the children by nature are radical because children by nature, human nature, is based on truth. So anything that doesn't reflect truth and justice is not going to find fertile ground in the minds of children. So the contradiction that Black America has with its young people is we don't want them getting in trouble, but at the same time, they understand the only way to make change is to get in trouble. And this is exactly why the youth do not listen to the adults, because when we looked at what happened in Ferguson and we looked at what happened in Baltimore with Freddie Gray and Eric Garner and all across the country, it was the youth that took to the streets in revolt. Whether we agree totally with what they did or not doesn't matter. The truth of the matter is they were willing to speak truth to power while the adults stood back and were afraid to lose their capitalist trinkets. And so we need to reevaluate ourselves, Carl, because if we don't start getting involved with the youth, they will reject us and destroy us on their pathway to destroying white supremacy itself.
All right, 800-450-7876. Speak to Dr. Umar Johnson. Line 1, Sadhu's calling us from Virginia. Sadhu?
Hello, Dr. Umar. Hello, Carl. This is really a great conversation. I'm an immigrant from Zaire, and I became a citizen a couple of years ago. One thing that I notice is that we are a victim of divide and conquer. That's what I see. And I really think that we are not uniting. We're not utilizing the power that we have in terms of, you can look at some of these NBA players. They're not speaking out some of the issues. Look at these NFL players. They're not speaking out some of the issues. And as a millennium, I try to organize, even at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. People are just distracted. They're too much into material things. They're too much into other things. So my question to you, Doctor, what does it take to press the reset button as far as us? Because I don't think Trump cares about us. He told us from day one how he feels about us. Okay? The first cabinet position that he nominated was Jeff Sessions to the Justice Department. And everybody needs to make a note of that, because what does that mean? All the civil rights are gone. The civil rights division is going to be erased. The voter right, you're going to have mass voter oppression on stores throughout the country. Everything that's being done is going to be on storage. So my question to you, what does it take for us to regroup, to unite? Is it a conference? I just want to know what it is.
Okay, good question. And the answer is twofold. Number one, we got to keep in mind that you can't reset human consciousness or the human brain the way you can reset a computer. Whatever is planted in the subconscious of a human will be there until they die. This is why they always say the first to the brain will rule that brain. And the first 15 years of a child is normally when the subconscious is largely programmed. So number one, we got to do a better job of preventing our young people who are radical by nature from becoming conformists. So that's the first thing we have to do. Second thing, we got to focus more on those young people. As far as the adults go, we have to do our best to find those who we feel can still be salvaged. Okay, some of our adults are still salvageable, but the wisdom is in knowing the difference between those which are salvageable and those that are not. See, here is the issue. The central contradiction of the black predicament in America is that we are exactly like the people we are fighting. We are exactly like the people that we are fighting. It doesn't matter how much we fight against capitalism, oppression, selfishness, racism, and discrimination. All of that lives in us now because it has been internalized. So that is to say that if we don't wage a simultaneous war against the power structure as well as that system that exists within us that was inculcated from the power structure, we will lose anyway. Take a look at Africa. When they finally achieved the African revolutions of the 60s, and they kicked the French out and kicked out the Europeans, guess what? The same revolutionary leaders who could not wait to expel the European became just like the European. Look at South Africa. I just came back from a 30-day tour of South Africa. What's the big problem in South Africa? The big problem in South Africa now is that the ANC, the party of Mandela, the ruling government, is beginning to lose a lot of its support and constituency because after they came to power, after they overthrew apartheid, they still continue to practice the same type of government that the apartheid system practiced, which is basically catering to the rich and ignoring the poor. That is a big problem that we have. So it's not just overthrowing white supremacy, it's also overthrowing the white supremacist that lives within each of us.
Wow. Doc, they want you to repeat the tour that you have for the youngsters?
Yes, the Black College and Consciousness Tour, Atlanta, Georgia, June the 28th until July the 12th. It's 14 days and 14 nights. Parents are not allowed to go. I will have chaperones just like last year. If the child doesn't live in Atlanta, all you have to do is fly them in, put them on the mega bus, drive them in, or you could put them on the train. Parents will communicate with me how their children are coming in. Every child needs to be there by the night of June the 27th. The day before, they must all be there at an undisclosed hotel where they will all meet the night before, and then we head out early in the morning to start visiting our first college, probably be Morehouse, followed by Spelman on the morning of the 28th. So parents do not have to physically bring the child. I will make sure that either myself or one of the other responsible chaperones secure them from the bus station, the train station, or the airport. And registration for that, Carl, will begin on New Year's Day, January the 1st. You will be able to register your child at princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. They will never be the same. I'm still hearing from the children from last year, Carl. They can't wait to sign up for this year. So it's really a life-changing experience.
What age are we talking about?
11 to 17. 11 to 17. And let me also say this, Carl. The last year when we did the tour, I Facebook Live most of the visits to the different Black history sites and colleges. The adults loved it so much that I decided that in March of this year, okay, before we do the college tour for the 11 to 17-year-olds, I'm seriously considering putting together a tour for the young adults, 18 to 25. So last year's tour that took us to Lincoln and Cheney and the Great Blacks to Wax Museum and the Frederick Douglass home, we will now do that for the young adults, 18 to 25. So if you have a young adult in your home, 18 to 25, they still don't know what to do with their life, they're going through stuff, and they'll be able to go on last year's North Tour this year. So we have two tours, 11 to 17 out of Atlanta and 18 to 25 out of New York City.
All right. 800-450-7876. Johnny's calling us from Long Beach, California. He's on line 3. Johnny, you're on with Dr. Umar.
Hey, Carl. Thanks for taking my call. How you doing, Dr. Umar?
Peace,
Dr. Umar, I wanted to ask you about
what you're talking about. Later on, you wanted to do like a litmus test for people to see how black they were, or would they would go along with the struggle. I mean, in that scenario, or using those. What about people who are biracial? And it seems to me in the future that we.
All right, Dr. Umar, you want to respond to the right biracial?
Certainly. Well, first, let me clarify. I'm not interested in a black test. I'm not interested in who's the blackest conscious-wise. I'm interested in who's the committed. In fact, my lecture in Queens next Saturday, the 11th, Queens, New York, I'm going to focus on the difference between black consciousness and black intelligence. Being conscious doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Being intelligent. Intelligence speaks to what are you doing to transform. Consciousness is purely awareness. Consciousness speaks to a church mentality of being aware of something, but intelligence actually speaks to you doing the things that need to be done. So I am willing to organize with black people who are not necessarily conscious, but who are committed to changing our reality. That's the only test I'm interested in. As far as biracial Africans, and I hate using the term biracial because it's not a term that I use. It's not even a scientifically valid term. When a black man lays down with a white woman and has a child, that child is not half white. Those 23 European chromosomes were genetically deficient. The 23 African chromosomes were genetically dominant. So when you make a child with a white woman, that child
hang on a second, Doc. We'll take this quick break real quick. Getting interesting right here. It's a big show. Rolls on from 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Back to the Carl Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for rolling with us and our guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. Just to remind you, some of the folks coming up in the next few days: metaphysician Dr. B, holistic doctor Stephen Tate, Haiti activist attorney Danto Zill, educator Dr. Walter Williams. Some of you know Dr. Walter Williams as the one who put on the table. It's been 20 years now. Says if you can prove that a man named Jesus the Christ or Muhammad the Prophet actually walked on the face of this earth, he'll give you $10,000. And that's been sitting there. Nobody's been able to claim it. And he says you got to use facts. Don't use the Bible or the Quran. And he's ready to give it up. But let's go back to Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar, I'll let you finish responding to Johnny from Long Beach, California's call.
Yes, sir, Carl. What I was saying to Brother Johnny is I don't really believe in this biracial thing. It's a political construct. Biologically, when a black person reproduces with someone of another race, our DNA dominates that process. That child is 99.9% African. Okay, and for me, a biracial African is still an African. I agree with the Honorable Marcus Garvey and most of the Pan-Africanists before him that we cannot afford to separate ourselves based on European political construct. If a black person has a black mother or a black father, I consider them African. Period, point blank, end of story. If one of your parents is an African, then so are you. So my biracial brothers and sisters are more than welcome to be a part of Team Pan-African. Their children are more than welcome to attend the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy when it is open. But I do want to be clear. Although you might be the product of a biracial relationship, you must be committed to not engaging in that same type of behavior when you select your mate. In other words, you might be a biracial man, but your wife better be African. You might be a biracial woman, but your husband better be African. You need to be committed to African people, whether you are biracial or 100% African. I judge all black people by the same ruler, and there's no differences for me. So my biracial brothers and sisters are welcome to organize with me.
Johnny?
Dr. Umar, so if I understand you correctly, it sounds like, I don't know, I'm just asking, it sounds like it's bordering on us being separatists, or it's where we would, you wouldn't want to deal with those people just because they may marry somebody, if they were of the, they would marry somebody white. What about if they married a Puerto Rican or a Cuban or a Dominican?
Okay, well, let me deal with that. Good question. My paternal great-grandfather was a Cuban, okay? And so, as we know, Latino is not a race, it's an ethnicity. So if you marry an African Puerto Rican, I have no problem with that. If you marry an African Cuban, I have no problem with that. But if you marry a white Puerto Rican or a white Cuban, I would have a problem with that, because politically, as Pan-Africanists, we believe that we need to be committed to our own women. We need to be committed to our own family, committed to our own community. There's no way you can be in love with black people, but you're not in love with a black woman. It is a contradiction. Marriage is a political decision, and whoever you marry, you have to struggle with. So it's going to be impossible for a black man to be committed to black revolution when you're sleeping with a member of the oppressor race. Apples and oranges cannot mix, and no serious black man should ever be married to a woman outside of his race.
If you can repeat the website, so just give us a chance to tell us where you're going to be in the DMV, because I know you're going to be a Thurgood Marshall in Northwest D.C. this weekend.
Yes, sir. The Thurgood Marshall Center, where Marcus Garvey actually spoke before, believe it or not, the Thurgood Marshall Center. I'll be there this Sunday, December the 4th, 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock. The doors open up at 4 o'clock. Tickets are available at princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. I'm sure, Carl, if they go to eventbrite.com and type in events in Washington, D.C. for Sunday, December 4th, the event should probably pop up. Please get your tickets ahead of time because they're going really, really fast. We can only fit 350 people inside the Thurgood Marshall Center. I've already sold 250 tickets. We only got about 100 left. So if you plan to come on Sunday, I expect it to sell out before then, so please go online. And if you have trouble finding the page, text me, and I will send you the link. 215-989-9858. Again, 215-989-9858. Or go to my website, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com. Send me a message. I'll send you the flyer as well as the link, or you can email me directly, drumarjohnson@yahoo.com. But please don't wait if you're coming because the tickets are really, really going fast, and I want to make sure you don't get left out. We also want to have a lot of vendors there, food vendors and jewelry vendors and other things, to come out and spend some money with some of your own people before you go give it all to the Arabs, East Indians, and Anglo-Saxons.
All right. Yeah. Before I take the next call, Johnny just tweeted back and he said, Harry Belafonte. How do you reconcile Harry Belafonte? He's married white, but he's also, quote unquote, fighting for our freedom.
Yes, I don't reconcile it. I respect Harry Belafonte, and I respect the good things that he has done for our people. But I also know that there's a limit of struggle that I cannot engage with him because he has given his heart over to white people. And any black man that has given their heart over to white people through marriage is a black man who cannot totally be trusted with what must be ultimately done to bring about African redemption. So I respect him as I respect other black men who struggle for our people who were married to non-African women. Thurgood Marshall, as a matter of fact, was not married to a black woman, and I respect the good that he did, but I still take issue with the fact that he did not make the ultimate commitment. The ultimate commitment in revolution is not to die for the people. The ultimate commitment in revolution is to give your heart to the people, and that's about marrying a black woman.
All right, 800-450-7876. Line 6, just go to your city, Philly. Rennie. Is he Rennie or Rennie?
Rennie. Oh, hi, Dr. Umar and Carl. I wanted to make a statement, ask the question. Okay, this is about the youth. You were talking about the youth being revolutions and moving forward. Okay, when we had the Black Panther Party, you had SNCC. During those times, they were young people, teenagers. Huey and Bobby were in their 20s. And, okay, on from there, okay, the next generation didn't pick up that baton because during the 70s when I was a child, okay, we still had the Black Power movement, and when I was a child, we knew who all the Black Panthers were in the community because of the community programs they had. And when I look at these kids today who call themselves the new Black Panther Party, they have no idea what it was like to be a Black Panther. Because when I see them, they're on bullhorns talking about the white man or screaming. They're not doing anything. They don't have the programs and the structures that the real Black Panther Party had when I was a child in the community. They don't have any of that. They don't have the connection to the community. And I'm saying, where did all of that go? Why wasn't that baton, because SNCC and all them and the Panthers had set this up for the youth. And it wasn't taken to the next level because when I was a teenager going into the 80s, it seemed like that spirit had it started to die.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond because we're racing the clock right now, Rennie. I thank you for your call.
Okay.
What happened?
Yes. Well, firstly, one of the reasons why you don't see the continuation in struggle, we have to realize that the Black Panther Party was violently oppressed. It was violently disrupted and destroyed. So after living through that, a lot of black parents went out of their way to make sure their children were in no way, shape, or form associated with anything that even remotely resembled the Black Panther Party of yesterday. But we also have to look at ourselves as adults. Black people have a bad habit of taking breaks during the struggle. Once one movement gets destroyed or one leader is assassinated, we take about 30 years off before we get back into the struggle. How do you ever catch up where you keep on taking that amount of time off between transferring power, transferring leadership, transferring organization? So that's number one. We have to stop taking breaks, just like we just took an 8-year break under Obama because we considered it to be an achievement. There is no breaks in revolution until you achieve the ultimate goal. The second part of my answer is that I'm going to have to disagree. I believe that the new Black Panther Party is, in fact, picking up some of that baton. They may do things a little bit different. Okay, the principles and foundation might be somewhat different, but I would say the goal is the same, and that is redemption and freedom for black people. And I can actually speak because I got a lot of good friends who do belong to the new Black Panther Party. My good brother Ali out in Los Angeles, that's one of them. They do security for me a lot. They do secure me in Houston. The Black Panther Party has played a major role in keeping Dr. Umar Johnson safe. So I would have to beg to differ on the second point, but I do agree with her on the first point. We do have to stop taking breaks between struggle and make sure we pass down the baton to the next generation before we retire or pass on.
All right, 800-450-7876. Terry's calling us. He's on line 5 from Columbus, Ohio. Terry, your question for Dr. Umar.
Dr. Umar, I definitely respect you a lot, listen to a lot of your lectures, but in my case, my wife is not black, but I love my wife. That's who I fell in love with, but I'm still socially conscious, and I still love our people, and I fight daily for our people. As a matter of fact, my wife is Chinese, and she knows the struggle of black people because when she moved over here, she fell in love with the black culture as far as her job, and she knows our struggle. So that's who I fell in love with.
All right, Let's give him a chance to respond. Thanks, Terry.
And I will be speaking in China for the first time in May. Unbeknownst to me, Carl, it's a very large population of African living in China, not only from America, not only from the African continent, but you even have African Chinese, the children of those who went over there for military service who are now of age, half Chinese, half African, and of course, there's no halves, as we know. But I would say this to the brother. I respect you. I respect your wife. I disagree in principle with you being married outside of the race, but I will respect that union. And there is a place for you within the struggle, but that place that you will occupy within the struggle can never be as my right-hand man because you've given your heart to another people. So when I say that I don't agree with it, that doesn't mean you can't help fight for your people. If what you say is true, there is a place for you, but you can never be within the inner circle of the struggle because you have already demonstrated through your behavior that you're willing to commit to another people outside of your own. So although we can still do some things together, we can't do everything together.
Doc, we got like 30 seconds, so tell us where you're going to be this weekend in the DMV and how can folks reach you, a website or email address?
Thurgood Marshall Center, Sunday, December 4th, 6 until 8. Doors open up at 4. Come out, get your tickets online, Prince of Pan-Africanism.eventbrite.com. We spell Africa with a K, or text me, 215-989-9858, 215-989-9858, DrUmarJohnson.com, Facebook, Dr. Umar Ifatunde, Twitter and Instagram, Dr. Umar Johnson. That's how you can reach out. Can't wait to get back to D.C.
All right. We'll see you again on the weekend. Thanks, Doc. Folks, as usual, we are always running late. Stay strong, stay positive, stay in the light. See you tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
You're bringing your daughter to her favorite pop star's concert. Do you A?